All right, welcome everybody to the Sunday call. There were some audio issues when we tried to go live, so I'm just recording it for you guys today and go over all the charts. So, as always, we're going to start with the broader market. So this is the SPX S&P index, and Friday was a very weak day into the close, and we mentioned this in the commentary. And going forward into next week, we have to be a little bit more cautious, in my opinion, given the sort of bearish close. And a lot of this was, related to all the headlines that came out throughout the week, tariff news, right? Initially, it wasn't clear if Trump was going to institute tariffs for China. Now it seems like there's a 10%. So we'll just have to see how this story develops. But regardless, it's important to keep up with the news cycle, but also what you should follow ultimately is the price action, right? The market is never wrong, and we are not in the business of predicting moves, but respecting where the market's heading, right? So with that in mind, we have the first hold month in the books for 2025. So if we look at the monthly chart from January, it was a positive month. The monthly chart still looks very, very strong. So no real warning signs there. If we go to the weekly chart, it was still a green week, but obviously it pulled back quite a bit from the highs. So the weakness, if you will, was pretty much apparent only from the daily chart for now. So we'll have to see how the Sunday futures open up. There are a few bearish headlines throughout the weekend. So it's possible we see a gap down, but it's really important to see how the market holds up. In terms of technicals, it's resting sort of on the 10-day moving average. You have the 50-day and the 20-day right below. So for this week, well, the level I would watch is, obviously 6,000, but then this area right below, which is a 50-day, right? 59.90, let's say. And because if it fails there, it's probably testing this 59.65 area. And if things get pretty weak and bearish this week, I think a test of 5,900 is not out of question. So definitely be prepared for that scenario. I think puts can work under 6,000. I would, personally, I like to trade SPY because, SPX is a big instrument, right? So the premiums are very expensive. You're almost always forced to use 0-day options, which I don't like to use typically. So that's my overall outlook for the week ahead for SPX. QQQ, similar. Again, as I said last week, but it's worth noting QQQ did not make new highs late January like SPX had done. So overall, it seems like it's sort of lagging to start the year. So for QQQ, again, a pretty bad rejection candle there. Similar to SPX, I would be prepared for the downside here under, let's say, the 50-day here. That's around 518. I think under 518, you can play puts for a move to 510 and possibly 500 in the next 2 weeks. On the upside, I would only start to look above the 530 area, and then this high from the week before around 534. So until it clears those two levels, I wouldn't really get too bullish on QQQ yet. For IWM, I have this up this time. It's kind of tested the 50-day. The 50-day is now actually declining, right? It tested the 50-day and rejected. I think here again, you can play puts under this area around 225 or so, 224.50, and then I do think above 230 could set up for calls, but again, depends on the overall market. IWM is not something I really trade too often because it just doesn't trade too well. I think if you zoom out, you'll see that it tried to break out in November, completely failed that move, right? This was pretty ugly. And now it's been sort of chopping around. Could this be more of a bear flag? Very possible. If we break to the downside under 225, you can probably catch a move to 218 or so, 217, and then 213. Over 230, I wouldn't mind taking a shot at calls, but we'll just see. And then if the upside were to play out, I would play it for a move up to around here, 236, 237. DIA is Dow Jones, which is the fourth index. Here again, similar to SPX QQQ, had a pretty bearish candle here. Almost tested the previous all-time high, but couldn't quite. Overall, could be resembling sort of a double top scenario. I don't really trade this too often, but it is important to keep in mind where sort of the indices are trading. So I just had it up, especially as we're starting the new month. I think very possible to retest this 50-day moving average around 437 if things get weak in February. Bitcoin is an interesting chart that I keep an eye on, obviously, both from the underlying itself, but then also crypto related stocks. And, Bitcoin had tried to break out above this 108 area. This, wicked right back lower, pretty violent rejection there, right? $6,000. And in the last 2 weeks, it's just been chopping around between 100 and, 108. Now it looks like it's failing, right? I think 100 was my sort of line in sand to remain bullish. I think this is going to test this area, 91,000, and then possibly take out this low at 89,000 this coming month. And so if that were to be the case, usually pullbacks on Bitcoin are pretty violent. I would not be surprised if we end up going to somewhere between 81,000 and 86,000, and even possibly back test the previous all-time high around 73,000. And then we'll just have to see how it goes. I mean, it's too early to say, but I am overall bullish on Bitcoin long term and for this year. But I think it is very possible that there's a sort of a shakeout move in Q1 and we head higher later in the year. So keep an eye on that. Overall, I think you should always consider the way Bitcoin trades as a direct measure of the risk appetite for this market. So when it's going down, it's really the time to not take too much risk on the upside in general. Moving on from Bitcoin, take a look at the China sector. KWeb, we caught a really good swing, right, from a couple weeks ago. And, overall still looks pretty good, in my opinion. Obviously, the news about China tariffs is going to affect the sector. We'll have to see how it acts this week. But I think as long as it can hold this 30 level, I remain sort of bullish on China for now. Within China, we caught a good move on BABA the last couple weeks. It got through 100 this past week. Struggled to get through this level around 104, and closed under 100 to close the week. I think for this week, what you want to see is get it defend this 94 area, this previous high. I think as long as even if we gap down and trade lower the first couple days of the week, I think if it can defend 94 and kind of close the week to get back near 100, I think it's still sort of in play in the coming weeks on the upside. So we'll just have to see how it goes there. But for calls, you could play the reclaim of 100, or you could wait for the breakout over 104 for now. It does have earnings coming up this week, so actually tomorrow. So that will be a big catalyst actually in terms of how it opens. So we'll see how it opens and go from there. Moving on from China, some semiconductor stocks that are on watch. So Avago, right, had earnings a few weeks ago, really strong move, then was building out this flag, tried to break above. We actually played this day when it, on not this past Friday, but the Friday before when it almost tested 250, and then gapped down severely, right, on that DeepSeek news on Monday, and then put in sort of a decent bounce for the week, but again, wicked off to close the week. Important to note, it wicked off right at that 20-day moving average, and so my thinking for this week is, I'm prepared to look at Ofgo both ways here because, in one sense, it kind of had that big sell off, but was quickly bought up, which is usually bullish. But a rejection of the 20 day is also something to note for the downside. So if the market's weak, um, this could very well come back and trade around 208 208 to 210, and then possibly test 200 again. So I would be open-minded about that, also depending on how chip stocks act overall. And then we also have Nvidia, right, which has been pretty weak overall versus the market. A lot of people are trying to buy the dip. I think if you're a long-term investor, it's a different ball game, but I would not try to buy this dip for 2 weeks out or a month out. I think the upside scenario for this comes back over, minimum 130, but ideally over 142 in my opinion. I do think this is a good put play if market is weak under 115. I would definitely take a shot at puts for a move to 109 and then possibly 100 in the coming few weeks. It has earnings end of the month, so it's possible if the market is weak, we can catch a move down near between 100 to 109. The February 21st 100 puts are still pretty cheap in my opinion if that scenario were to play out. But regardless, I am personally not even looking for calls on this over unless it's over minimum 130. ARM is another semiconductor stock that actually had a pretty strong Friday, I would say, compared to others. So I'm watching ARM over 164, which is a pretty key level for this name. And if the chip stocks are strong and if overall market's strong, I think ARM over 164 could be a good trade to watch. If it acts weak, I would probably leave it alone for now, and rather short Nvidia, or if Avgo is weak. So in general, guys, like we want to long the stocks that are strong and short the stocks that are relatively weak. So, and then moving on from the semis, coin actually, before, as we were heading into this week on Saturday morning, I actually liked coin for the upside. If it can get through 300 again, I think it might be a good upside play. But seeing Bitcoin down, whatever 3%, breaking 100K, it's at 97,000. Coin is going to gap down, right? It's probably going to gap down, at least to 280, if not lower. So then, if it gaps down to here, this almost will start to look like a bear flag scenario. So I'll watch out for that. I think depending on how Bitcoin acts, coin could be a good short. But maybe the better short would be MSTR because overall it's been the weaker of the two, right? So MSTR, I would say under 320 is a pretty good short this week if Bitcoin were to be weak. I think you can catch a move to 300, even 280 if things really are weak. Notice that on this bounce it couldn't really hold the 50-day here, and now it's kind of trading under all sort of the key moving averages, 10, 20, and the 50. So I like MSTR for a short. We'll see how it opens and go from there, but that's sort of on my short list. XYZ, we traded this last week, caught almost a double on the calls. It again with the general market had a weaker Friday, but I'm watching this, for to see how it trades this week. If it can base and hold above sort of 90, which might be a tough ask in a weak market, I think it can go higher in the coming weeks. But again, we'll have to see how the market acts. But this is sort of on my wait and see list for now. And similar is Hood. Hood has been extremely strong, right? It made new highs this week. And, I think Hood is an excellent buy around, if you can get 46 again or 44, which was the breakout level, that would be an excellent buy. So definitely be on the lookout for that dip buy scenario if markets get weak. If markets are strong early in the week, I think over 53.5, which was a high. I mean, is probably a quick trade for calls if you want. I wouldn't size too massive on it because the stock has been running, right. Ideal entries were 44, and then last week, early on in the week, when it dipped under 50 and got bought up, that was another good entry, right. For now, it looks strong, so no harm in playing calls, but just be reminded that you've sort of missed a big chunk of this move out of this base, so you have to keep your stops tight. Another name that looks pretty strong overall is Shopify. It did make a new 52-week high on Friday, but then pulled back to close the day. Not the best candle, right? But this is on watch if it can reclaim this 121 level. I think if it can reclaim the 121, it can probably push towards 127 to 130 ahead of earnings, which is actually next week, not this week. So this is on watch, maybe later in the week if it can push through 121. Google, really fantastic chart. I think we've been talking about it for a couple of weeks, but it has earnings this week, right? So earnings is really going to dictate how this trades. It was difficult. Some of you caught this, I know, this past week. I missed the entry at 200, but it paid, right? This week, I personally wouldn't play this week's expiration just because it has earnings. There's a lot of IV, but if you are bullish on the name, I think if you get the 221 calls, maybe the 220s as an earnings lotto with profits, that's an option. But definitely don't think twice before gambling on earnings. But the chart overall definitely looks good, and I'm watching to see how it acts after earnings. Netflix, another big cap name that's been acting really strong, especially after earnings. It's in a very tight range for a stock that's priced at 1,000. So for this week, again, Netflix is a good one where I'm prepared to trade this both ways. So if it can get near 1,000, it's worth a shot for calls. If the market also gets bounces, if the market's weak and Netflix is near 1960, 950, I think it's possible in a weak market that it fills this earnings gap, right? Trades all the way down to sort of 900. So I'd keep an eye on Netflix, especially toward the end of the week, because it's a big stock. Monday, Tuesday, very expensive for premiums. So I like to trade Netflix maybe on a Thursday or a Friday, and similar to cost as well, right? So be on the watch out for that. DocuSign, we played this early in the week last week, caught a really nice move that day, right on the breakout day. And then it held up well, right? Like there was these 2 days where it sort of based and consolidated, and it kind of held up fairly well, I would say. So I'm still watching this for a second entry, right, around 99, for maybe the 105 or 110 calls for 221. We'll have to see again how the market acts and also how growth stocks act in general, but this chart looks pretty good to me. Twilio is another chart, right, we talked about last week. It's gapped up on that upgrade, and then has really shown super strength, right? It's moved from 135 on the gap up all the way to 151. So this is on my sort of wait and watch mode kind of list. Ideally, I want to see this base for a little bit more and then play the breakout. Again, if the market's weak, it's probably gonna, bleed down to the bottom of the range. I would not play puts on this. Again, don't try to play puts on things that are clearly stronger than the market. Um, but wait for an opportunity to buy the dip on those names. And then for the names that are acting weak, that's where you play puts when the market is weak. Um, but watching this, if it gets through 150, 151 early in the week, again, it's kind of like hood, worth a shot for calls, but just be aware that it's run quite a bit, so it is possible that it rejects in a weak market. PLTR, another name that was really aggressively bought back up, right, on that dip, and made new 52-week highs on Friday. Over 85 calls could work. It has earnings, actually, has earnings tomorrow, so I would just wait to see where it opens after earnings, and then go from there. Stock looks really bullish. Looks like it wants 100. So definitely on my list to trade this breakout around 85. But when there's a binary event in front of it, I'd rather wait to see how it acts. Snow is another name in sort of the overall cloud software space that had a pretty strong reaction following the DeepSeek news. Had a really strong day on Tuesday. This is on watch over, I would say, 189, 188, 189. This can be a pretty good stock, in my opinion, for this year. So, if we get a dip in February, let's say, and Snow is trading around, somewhere here like 170, 175, I think this is a good dip buy. If not, also watching the 188 breakout level for a move to 194 and then 200. App is a name that we traded last week. Finally got through that 372 area, right? But it couldn't really hold. Regardless, it's pretty strong relative to the market. So definitely watching this over this 385 level for a move to 400, which can happen the same day. It's a very volatile name, but that also means that when it moves, it really moves, right? So provides good opportunities on both sides. If it fails 350 this week, I think it's a good put play. Especially if the market's weak, it can I think come all the way down to the bottom of this range, right? So keep that in mind. Don't always keep both scenarios in mind when the market is sort of showing signs of weakness near the highs. Lululemon made a new high this week, and overall, its chart looks very bullish. It had this series of green days, right? Almost 7 green days, and then slight pullback on Friday. I'm watching this. If it can, get back through 423, it might be good for calls later in the week. But also, if retail stocks are weak, if it fails maybe the 400 area, it could be a nice put play towards 373 around the 50-day moving average to this level 366. So watching 423 on the upside and maybe 400 on the downside. Reddit had a pretty strong week. We initially caught this breakout out of 180, 182 on this day. Then it had that gap down on Monday with the general market on the DeepSeek news, but then really got aggressively bought back up, tested 207. So if you guys held the runners for the 200 call for this past week, they paid really well, right? For now, I would, upside, I would wait for 208. Earnings are also on the horizon for this next week. So I'm really waiting for the on this stock. I think you can play if the market's really weak. I think you can play puts under 195. Is a very quick trade for maybe a back test of this 189 to 190 area, but personally might just focus on the names that are weaker, like Nvidia. Um, and then I mentioned, let's see, I mentioned MSTR would be another weak name for puts, and then UPST. Speaking of weak names, UPST is another name that's setting up for puts. In my opinion, if the market is weak, you have this bear flag, right? It's trading under the 50-day. It rejected on Friday. If it can break the 63 level, which would also crack the 20-day, I think it can set up for a nice move to 55, right? So UPST is on watch for puts, and on at least on my list. So then we have ABT. ABT is sort of a name that we don't really trade too much, but it's hard to deny this strength, right? Moved from 110 all the way to 130. Now it's had this several days of sort of tight range. So watching for more of a quick day trade lotto setup over 129.3 or 130. Again, not a high quality setup, but you can't ignore the strength. So I have an alert here. We'll let you guys know if we find something good on it. And then a few other names on the downside that I like are, STZ, nice bear flag here after a pretty solid negative reaction on earnings earlier in January. I think under this 176 level, you can catch a nice move to 160. 160 was, one of the lows all the way back in 2020. Right here in October of 2020, before the 2020 election. This stock has been really weak, right, overall. So again, when the market seems like it's turning, I want to like if I'm playing puts, I want to focus on the weak names. You can see like it based and then hit the sort of declining 10-day, 20-day, 10-day moving average. It looks like it might be rolling over again. So this looks like a nice play for puts, in my opinion. A couple other names I'm watching for puts on the downside are CEG and then NRG. So CEG, was running hot on the AI theme, gap down 20% on the DeepSeek news. And then had a pretty strong bounce, like almost a 50-point bounce, but now it's hitting up against these moving averages, right? So sometimes these bounces can be like a dead cat bounce that just gets sold immediately afterwards. So I'm watching this for puts, especially if it fails to sort of hold 300. I think it can be a nice put trade to somewhere between this wick at 260 to this level 266. So that's definitely on watch this week for puts. And NRG is a very similar setup where it gapped down, bounced into the moving averages, and now might be rolling over. So if NRG fails, let's say 100, you can probably catch a move to 95 and then 93.5 here. But yeah, so overall, that's the end of the list. But overall, I would be prepared for both sides, number one, this week. And then just, like I broke down the different stocks, have your list of stocks that you are interested in on the upside, and have your list of stocks that you're interested for puts, right? I would look at Nvidia, I would look at MSTR, I would look at CEG, NRG, and STZ for puts, and UPST as well. And then for calls, just focus on the names that have been strong, right? You have Hood, you have Shopify, DocuSign, all good names, PLTR if the earnings reaction is good, things like that. But we'll see how the market opens tomorrow morning, and catch you guys there. Thanks.